Have you ever thought about making a complaint to Ibac, Victoria's independent anti-corruption agency, or just wondered how Ibac works? Maybe you've seen our investigations in the media and wondered what the background was. Well, you've come to the right place. Hello, I'm David Wolfe, one of Ibac's Deputy Commissioners, and I have oversight over the public sector, including state and local government.
And hello, I'm Kylie Kilgour, Acting Deputy Commissioner, with a focus on independent police oversight. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands we live and work on. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging from these lands, and the communities who may be in the audience.
We're here to talk about Ibac and our work, particularly with regards to complaints about corruption and police misconduct. This is a live event and we'll be answering questions later, so please start submitting them via the Q&A function. And please note that while we'll be talking generally about the course of a complaint and Ibac examples, we'll not be discussing individual complaints.
So, what is Ibac and what do we do? Ibac's purpose is to prevent and expose public sector corruption and police misconduct. This is the inappropriate or unlawful behaviour of people employed in the public sector, by which we mean police also, or people who are trying to influence someone in the public sector. We receive complaints about, investigate and report on public sector corruption and police misconduct, and produce resources to educate people about and prevent corruption and misconduct. Ibac's jurisdiction is across the whole of the Victorian public sector, including state and local government, police, the judiciary, and members of parliament. Ibac is one of three core independent integrity agencies that aims to protect the integrity of the Victorian public sector and Victoria Police. The other agencies are the Victorian Ombudsman and the Victorian Auditor General's Office.
Ibac is legally required to prioritise investigation into matters of serious and systemic corruption and police misconduct. If you suspect public sector corruption or police misconduct, you can report it to Ibac. And this is the beginning of the course of a complaint at Ibac. For matters related to the public sector, Ibac can accept complaints about corrupt conduct. That is, conduct involving the misuse of a public sector employee's power or position. Examples include fraud, theft, embezzlement, taking or offering of bribes, misusing information or material gained through work, or misuse of power to harm, oppress, or disadvantage another person. And for example, Ibac received a complaint that a councillor was accepting gifts as bribes in return for awarding community grants to a prominent businessman. Ibac did not ultimately substantiate the allegations, but we did identify corruption risks within the council, and including management of conflicts of interest.
Ibac can also receive complaints about all types of Victoria Police employees: sworn police officers, public service employees, protective service officers, and police custody officers. Some of the types of misconduct by a member of Victoria Police that you can report to Ibac include excessive use of force, disclosure of sensitive police information, and breaches of human rights. For example, Ibac conducted an investigation into a detective leading senior constable who was attending an adult entertainment venue and associating with the manager. Ibac found the detective leading senior constable had an ongoing relationship with the venue and received favourable treatment in the form of free entry and alcohol. Ibac also found the officer accessed Victoria Police information about his associates and at least once disclosed this information to an employee of the adult entertainment venue. The detective leading senior constable resigned from Victoria Police while under investigation and pled guilty to charges of unauthorised access and disclosure of police information. The officer was fined $3,000 without conviction. Issues such as rudeness, slow response times, and inappropriate uniforms are not something Ibac can investigate, but these can be raised directly with Victoria Police. We also do not investigate the outcomes of traffic infringements or court decisions. We suggest you get legal advice if this is your problem.
Ibac also cannot investigate issues arising in other states or territories. or the federal government. Ibac also cannot investigate the private sector unless the public officials or public agencies are involved or are affected.
There are two main ways to tell Ibac about public sector corruption or police misconduct. Firstly, you can make a complaint, or secondly, you can provide us with information. You can do this by completing the forms on the Ibac website. Complaints and information reports may be made anonymously, but this means we can't contact you if we need more information, and we won't be able to notify you of the outcome. Ibac can generally only accept complaints provided in writing. Complaints are not accepted over the phone. However, if you need additional support to make a complaint, Ibac can put you in touch with support agencies. We also provide translation services and have some of our key resources available in several community languages. If you want to talk to someone at Ibac before you make a complaint, you can call 1300 735 135 and you can speak with a member of Ibac's assessment and review team.
Ibac receives complaints from community members and from the public sector and Victoria Police. In addition, all heads of public sector bodies must notify Ibac of suspected corrupt conduct. These are called mandatory notifications.
You can help Ibac assess your complaint by providing a summary of the information, including specific dates, events, and names of those involved, and letting us know the outcome you would like. If you leave contact details, Ibac may contact you seeking further information.
The first stop of each complaint is Ibac's assessment and review team. The assessment and review team will acknowledge we have received your complaint within 5 business days of you submitting it. Assessment and review assesses each complaint and makes recommendations to us, Ibac's Deputy Commissioners. Each complaint is assessed against the Victorian Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities. Ibac also looks at whether a complaint can be considered a public interest disclosure, which is essentially whether it is a whistleblower complaint and therefore qualifies for protections, such as from defamation or detrimental actions. Ibac manages your personal information carefully and lawfully. And with each complaint, Ibac decides whether to investigate it, refer it to another agency for investigation, and this includes the agency the complaint is about, or dismiss the complaint. Ibac will inform you of the outcome of your complaint, including reasons for the conclusions we reach and the actions we take. Ibac deals with most standard complaints within 45 days. However, more complex complaints may require more time, and we aim to assess these within 90 days.
If a complaint is about serious or systemic corruption, it may be necessary to conduct a lengthy formal investigation. There is a common misunderstanding that Ibac can investigate every complaint we receive, but this is not what our legislation requires. As mentioned earlier, we have a legislative obligation to prioritise investigations into matters of serious and systemic corruption and misconduct. When we recommend a matter for investigation, it's because we have determined that the information meets our investigation threshold. There is reasonable evidence of corrupt conduct or police misconduct, including that it may involve indictable offences. Some of the other things we consider include the severity of any alleged harm or potential harm, the likelihood the alleged conduct will continue if no action is taken, and whether the conduct could diminish public confidence in the public sector or Victoria Police. We also consider whether there are systemic issues that have broader impacts for the public sector and Victoria Police, if there are any aggravating circumstances, or whether there's evidence of willfulness or culpability.
For example, Ibac's Operation Fitzroy investigated former Department of Transport employees who corruptly awarded infrastructure contracts to companies they had connections with and for personal profit. Ibac decided to investigate because the allegations contained possible serious corrupt conduct that suggested significant impact on public resources and a waste of public money.
Ibac may assess a complaint and decide that the matter should be referred to another agency. This may be because the complaint is about organisations or people Ibac cannot investigate. or it may involve conduct that should be investigated but does not meet Ibac's high threshold of serious and systemic corruption or police misconduct. Or the complaint should go to another agency that is better placed than Ibac to act on the information.
In these circumstances, Ibac may refer a matter to the agency your complaint is about. For example, if you make a complaint about a government department, Ibac may decide that the alleged conduct does not meet our threshold, but should be looked into and is something that the department should handle itself. Or the complaint may be about improper conduct that Ibac cannot investigate, but the Victorian Ombudsman can. And so we may refer it to the Ombudsman. For example, in October of 2020, the Victorian Ombudsman published a report on an investigation into corporate credit card misuse at Warrnambool City Council. Ibac had received multiple allegations about the misuse of credit cards at the council, and we referred these reports to the Ombudsman, who ultimately investigated.
Similarly, for Victoria Police matters, we may refer the complaint to Professional Standards Command, known as PSC, in Victoria Police. PSC will investigate or oversight complex matters, while less complex complaints will be allocated to another part of Victoria Police, either a region, department or command to investigate. Victoria Police has obligations under the Victoria Police Act to notify Ibac of all complaints made to them about Victoria Police officers. Ibac is also informed if there is a serious incident, which includes if there is a death or serious injury associated with police contact with a person. Depending upon the seriousness of the notification, Ibac may commence an investigation or allow Victoria Police to conduct the investigation of the matter.
So when Ibac refers a matter to another agency, we may request the agency notifies Ibac of the outcomes of their assessment and potential investigation of that matter. And this is so that we can conduct a review of how they have dealt with the referral. We may decide to review a matter because it involves an issue that has been identified as a topic or risk that we are specifically focusing on, or because we consider it to be in the public interest for Ibac to review it because it involves significant allegations of corrupt conduct. We may also review a matter because there is significant public concern about it. When we review a matter, we assess whether the investigation was fair and thorough and the outcomes were appropriate. Our reviews identify when investigation practices do or do not meet expectations and standards. And we also make recommendations for how the agency can improve its policies and processes.
For example, Ibac reviewed a police investigation into how an overseas national was allegedly treated during arrest, transport, and while in custody. This included allegations their phone calls were restricted and that police failed to recognise and address their mental health issues. We raised concerns with Victoria Police, including why station rules stated only police will make a call for the prisoner, as this was contrary to the Crimes Act 1958, which permits prisoners to make one call. In response to our review, Victoria Police revised the station's procedures to allow prisoners to make calls.
As the complainant, you'll be informed of if your complaint is referred and to which agency Ibac have actually referred it to.
For some complaints, their course at Ibac will end shortly after being received because the complaint is dismissed. Ibac may dismiss a complaint for a few reasons, such as there's not enough information provided and there may be no way to get further information from the person who made the complaint. Ibac may also dismiss a complaint because the matter has already been investigated by another agency and there's no new evidence, or it does not concern a matter that Ibac or another agency can investigate, or the alleged corruption or police misconduct occurred more than a year ago and there is not a valid reason for the delay in reporting, or the complaint is considered minor in terms of Ibac's jurisdiction. For example, it may be a complaint about the way a service was delivered. Once a complaint is dismissed, Ibac will take no further action. If your complaint is dismissed, we will let you know the reason.
If Ibac decides to investigate a complaint, the information received by the assessment and review is passed on to one of Ibac's investigations teams. If your complaint is investigated, Ibac will notify you. You'll also be likely to be asked to assist the investigation, such as by providing additional information. You will also be required to keep the investigation confidential. We try to complete investigations within 9 months. However, if the situation is more complex, it may take up to 18 months or more, especially if there are prosecutions after the investigation concludes. For example, Operation Ord, which was an investigation into the conduct of former senior officers in the Department of Education and the misuse of funds for banker schools. This operational investigation commenced in 2013. And while the investigation concluded in 2016, the court matters are still continuing.
Ibac has a broad range of powers to investigate complaints. Ibac can compel the production of documents and objects or seize documents and objects, such as laptops and mobile phones. We can enter and search premises, use surveillance devices, for example, by placing cameras or listening devices in cars or offices of suspects, and intercept telecommunications, for example, by tapping phones. Ibac can also hold private examinations. These take place at Ibac's offices and are not open to the general public or media. Or we may hold public examinations. These are open to the general public, and transcripts and other information are published on Ibac's website. The investigative techniques Ibac uses will depend on the nature of the allegation, whether there are witnesses, when the alleged conduct occurred, and the seriousness of the conduct.
Remembering Operation Fitzroy, which was the investigation into corrupt procurement practices of the former Department of Transport employees. Well, this investigation and during it, Ibac conducted physical surveillance. We executed over 20 search warrants. We seized over 2,000 separate property items. And in the use of that, in the course of that investigation, Ibac's powers were quite extensive. So we do have extensive powers, and to use these, we must use them appropriately. Ibac in some instances must apply to the Supreme Court or other courts before exercising powers that may affect people's privacy and civil liberties.
Participating in an Ibac investigation, particularly public and private examinations, can be a stressful experience. We take our responsibility to look after the welfare of witnesses very seriously. If you're a witness called to attend an examination, Ibac can provide welfare support. This support could include access to professional counselling services and access to an Ibac witness welfare officer during the examinations.
So at the end of an investigation, Ibac will decide if the conduct we examined was corrupt or was police misconduct. If there is evidence of corruption or police misconduct, Ibac may bring criminal proceedings for an offence relating to any matter arising out of the investigation, or refer any matter under the investigation to the Office of Public Prosecutions. Whether or not we decide to prosecute depends on a few things, including the strength of the evidence, whether there is a reasonable chance of a successful prosecution, and if the prosecution would be in the public interest. Outcomes from criminal prosecution include imprisonment, community corrections orders, payment of fines, and compensation.
Ibac may also refer matters to another entity to consider disciplinary or other action. Ibac may identify opportunity for preventative actions or make recommendations to the agency that was the subject of the investigation. Or Ibac may make recommendations for actions to address and prevent systemic issues and risks for organisational corruption. Or we may suggest information for employees about how to prevent corruption and misconduct.
Before publishing information from investigations, Ibac conducts a natural justice process. This provides individuals and agencies who are discussed in the report the opportunity to review the information in the report before it's published. As the complainant, you can expect Ibac to let you know the outcome of your complaint. This may take some time, as we need to wait for the natural justice process for those mentioned in the report to unfold. If you are not satisfied with how Ibac or an Ibac officer dealt with your complaint, you can make a complaint to the Victorian Inspectorate. But please bear in mind that the Victorian Inspectorate cannot overturn an Ibac decision or direct Ibac to alter a decision.
As we said earlier, Ibac also has a role in preventing corruption and police misconduct, as well as exposing it. Ibac has a prevention and communication team that leads the organisation's prevention activities. At the end of an investigation, the information gathered is used to engage and educate the community, public sector and Victoria Police about the corruption issues found during the investigation. This may take the form of a special report on the investigation or an investigation summary that will be published on the Ibac website. Other activities can include writing to relevant public sector organisations to inform them of the investigation outcomes and corruption risks uncovered, and delivering educational forums and events.
So Ibac takes every complaint we receive seriously. And as you can see, one complaint can be the reason for an investigation that exposes serious corruption or misconduct. And while many of the complaints we receive do not lead to an Ibac investigation, the information does not go to waste. The information given to Ibac provides intelligence, which we use for other investigations or to assess against other complaints, or for our research and prevention activities on corruption and misconduct.
Corruption hurts everyone. It is not a victimless crime. If you suspect corruption or police misconduct, please report it to Ibac. Your complaint will be taken seriously. So on that note, thanks for joining us today. If you'd like further information about Ibac's work, visit our website. We also share information via Twitter, LinkedIn and YouTube, so check out those channels too.